start off making our way all the way down comfortably onto the ground. We're enjoying a few rounds of breath here as we're getting started. Wonderful inhales, not long, slow, relaxed exhales. Our intention today is connecting with the element of earth. Earth has, I'd say, three main qualities that we try to strive for. One is the grounding quality. Earth, the physics of it, because Earth has so much mass, it has gravity, and so it holds us down rather than making us float off in space forever. So that's the first quality, grounding. We have something down to connect us to. The second is stabilizing. It's stable in that we can walk on it and it's solid for us. It's not like water where you would just drop right down into it. And then the third quality would be the nurturing quality. There's so many elements that are in the earth that life needs. That's exactly what plants are designed to do, is draw their roots down so that they can start to take all those elements up into the plant bodies. And so with those three qualities, think of the quality that you need most right now in your life. Do you need the groundingness, that ability to have gravity and something solid to rest on? Do you need the stabilizing quality, the ability to move forward with something to push against? Or do you need the nurturing qualities in your life right now? The yin poses that we'll take in our class today are some of my favorites. They go nice and deep into the muscle groups. And specifically, they were chosen because of the grounding, the nurturing, and the stabilizing qualities that they have. Specifically, another cool aspect of where we're working with today, if you were to take 4 fingers distances up from your ankle, there's an acupuncture point right there that is specifically with the earth element. It's on the spleen meridian, and it helps us to connect down to that earth element. So a lot of the things that we'll be doing will be opening that part of the calf and the shin, helping it to stretch through and expand through that part of the meridian to help us connect to earth. So without further ado, let's begin our first pose. We'll start off sliding the bottoms of the feet together, essentially taking a nice cobbler's pose while we're in the supine position. Bottoms of the feet are together, the knees are opening wide. And as the rest of the body isn't necessarily doing anything, I'll give you a few nice suggestions that you can choose to take on while you're more or less in this shape. So one option is to have palms face down. With the palm face down, you're able to literally touch your hands toward the direction of earth. So if you're taking that variation, you're trying to connect with gravity, trying to feel the solid ground right underneath you. Other options include some shoulder stretches, grabbing onto elbows, or maybe even onto wrists, either way, and letting the arms start to stretch up overhead so that you get a nice arch to the spine, that nice low back lift, while the shoulders are opening. So you can play with the variation that feels the very best. And just continue this nice slow breath. When we get into states of anxiety and panic, we start to send too much energy into the elements of air and ether. Those elements are the elements of the future, the elements of what if, all the potential futures that could possibly ever happen. And sometimes it's nice to consider it that. That's why it's so special being human, because we can imagine new possibilities and draw that future to us. However, when we're ungrounded, that nature of earth, of air and of ether can be very unsettling. It can be bringing in a feeling of anxiousness into our body. And so sometimes it's nice to slow those down into the very slow vibration of the earth, that density, that thickness, that just being in this present moment, and that's all. So let the breath slow down, helping to take you out of that panic and into the now. As you're here, make sure that the space in between your eyebrows is relaxed. There's a very important energy column that travels up our spine, and they say that that column ends right in between the eyebrows. So when we crunch up our eyebrows, we're kind of pinching off that central channel. Instead, let's let the eyebrows stay relaxed, the facial muscles released, so that way we can keep the energy flowing through our body. That's another little trick that we have to take us out of the states of panic also. Just helping us realize I'm here, I'm present, at least in this moment, everything is okay. Trying to aim for 3 more good slow breaths. Make them the slowest of this entire practice so far. As your third breath finishes, draw the hands down back by your sides. The hands coming to the outer parts of the thighs, and the hands help to lift the thighs up. From this place, the feet are planting about as wide as the mat, and we pause in a windshield wiper, both knees falling over to the left side. You have the option, as long as it's not too intense for the knees, to take the left ankle and rest it on top of the right thigh. This literally is exposing that point that we talked about, 4 finger distances above the inner ankle. It's exposing it and lifting it, while on the opposite side, it's kind of stretching it out. We hold poses for a long time, but this pose has a little bit of pressure on the knee if you've got it lifted, so we won't stay quite as long. Still use the time that we have to breathe and to feel how even in uncomfortable things, we can still ground. We can still relax, we can still release, and we always have the choice to simply drop the ankle down out of the intensity. Sometimes we don't realize that in life, that all it takes is dropping it down, just that 3 inches of release, and suddenly life gets a lot better. Taking 3 more breaths on this side. Try to keep them extra slow. And the lifting of that right knee is extremely gentle. So maybe even your hands help it rise gently back up. Once you're up, switch the windshield wiper to the second side. Both knees falling over to the right this time. And we have the option for the full time or for part of the time to take the right ankle and rest it onto the top of that left knee. Notice when things get hard is our tendency to continue that slow, deep cycle of breath. Or do we lose control of the breath altogether, hardly breathing at all? It's not a point to make somebody right or wrong in how they breathe, because how you've breathed your whole life has led you to where you are right now. And so no matter how difficult the past may have been, I'm grateful for it because that's what's brought me to where I am. But now is the point where we can begin to become more conscious of even these little tiny things that we do. They say that the average person only breathes in to about 30% of their lung capacity during the majority of the day. And so can we breathe a little bit deeper? Getting maybe not a fast breath, but a deep breath, trying to get closer to 100% of that lung capacity, making sure even the lower parts of the lungs, those low lobes, are even getting to touch air. Another 3 breaths on this side. And as the 3rd breath finishes, perhaps the hands help lift that left knee, making sure we're not injuring the knee by putting too much pressure all at once. And then take a few active movements left and right back into that normal windshield wiper. When that starts to feel okay, we're bringing our feet back into cobbler's pose and we're rising up into a seated position. So rising all the way up, feet back into that cobbler shape. We let our spine release up and over. This is the first place where you can start using that bolster if you wish, perhaps bringing the bolster out in front of you as something comfortable to rest onto. Slow, peaceful place to be. It's fun to notice how different this upright posture is. The legs are doing exactly what they were before, and yet the experience is different. So be with it. Breathe with it. notice the ujjayi breath naturally happening in your body, that's when we have a light constriction of the throat. It makes it seem like an ocean wave passing in and out of the throat as we breathe in and out. This can be a very grounding breath because it's slowing us down. Oftentimes we talk about wanting to raise up our frequency in the world of yoga, which is true. We want to live more in the frequency of love than in fear. However, that doesn't mean that our body has to be so active and so constant, moving and action and doing. We can take these times like this to slow our body down, because when our body's slow, calm, and relaxed, it's much easier for our emotions to be a little bit higher in the frequency, to be more along the lines of peace, joy, love, even enlightenment. And so feel that breath helping to calm the body. Nice and peaceful, in and out of the throat. Of those breaths, slowing it down even more if possible. And as we gently start to rise all the way back up, we start to head into a quadricep stretch. So with this stretch, we can come onto our knees. We're only going to do one at a time. And so this left leg is going to be tucked back as the right leg allows itself to extend forward. If this is too intense on this left knee, all you have to do is swing the knee a little bit wider. That brings it into a place that's a bit more gentle for the knee. If at any point even that's too intense, simply lift the knee up to kind of just rest onto the other thigh. So you've got some options to play with. But if this is doing pretty good, the knees being close together is a deep version. I personally am going to have the bolster behind my back as I start to lean backwards. You can choose to follow me or choose a different position. Some people even go all the way to the ground, so your choice. And sometimes even just leaning partially back onto your hands, propping up like this is all you need to start getting into that nice quad stretch. The tailbone scooping under and up gets us even deeper. Leaning back also gets us deeper. So continue to explore until you're in a nice stretch. And here, as we're paying attention to that meridian point that's right above the ankle, notice what the ankle itself wants to do. It's nice sometimes for me to keep my toes tucked back. Perhaps you also want to play with some time flexing the foot off to the side, and literally in that moment, that point that we're talking about, 4 inches above the inner ankle, is getting to actually be in contact with the ground. So you can play with it if you prefer the other version, nothing wrong with that at all. But feel yourself releasing, opening, and expanding. This is another place where the hands, if you're all the way back, can absolutely be finding the groundedness. You can do the same option as before, holding onto elbows or wrists, letting that rise above the head. Or if you want to do a different shoulder stretch, you can take this side to let the right arm cross over the body, pulling it in. And when we switch the legs, we can do that stretch for the left arm. If you're doing this variation, you can play with the shoulder. Sometimes I let it rise up closer to the ear. More often than not, I'm trying to push it down. What that does is pull against the neck, allowing even the neck to stretch for me. Play with it. Find the perfect place to be in for this side. If the arms start to get tired, simply drop them back down, connecting with the earth. Enjoying 3 more breaths. We want to be gentle on the knee as we rise up, so let's exactly reverse everything that we did. If the head's resting down, lift the head up, bring the elbows under the shoulders, and then prop the hands under the shoulders. And as we rise up, we can lean over to the right side to free out the left knee. Start to let that left leg extend, reaching forward, and we take some time with the right leg as well. Beginning to tuck it back. Choose the variation that's feeling good on the right knee. And perhaps we start to either lean back on the hands, drop down to left elbow, or lay all the way back onto your bolster. Another chance to have a choice point. Am I pointing this ankle on the right foot? Or am I flexing the foot to rest the ankle down directly in contact with the earth? If you're in an okay spot, that's great. Sometimes though, I want a little bit more, so that tailbone tuck scooping under and up is exactly what I need to start stretching the quad quite a bit better. So far as the muscles themselves, the quads are actually quite a bit stronger than the hamstrings because of the necessity of that quad muscle when we're walking and running. We just use it a lot more. It's what lifts up the knee so that we can lift the leg up and take a step forward. Obviously, we need the hamstrings for their stability and to be that counter side to the quads. But the quads can get so tight, and there's only a couple of poses that will start to stretch them out. So this is one of them. So use this as an opportunity to start stretching those really strong muscles out. If you haven't gotten to the shoulder stretch already, or if you did the right side before, take the left arm, making sure that you're balancing your body out. gets tired, we can drop it down and take those last 3 breaths here. Once again, reverse every single step to rise up and free the leg out. From here, we're going to head up either to sit on your bolster or block for a yogic squat, or come away from the props and just simply squat on your own. It's your choice today. More restorative version is the seated version. And the other is beautiful as well. Slightly more yin, slightly more yang. Now pay attention to that spot right above, that 4 finger widths above the ankle. And notice we're trying to help that spot be open, so the knees are going wide continuously. An easy spot to pay attention to is the arch of the foot. This is a pose where it tends to be the tendency to collapse into the arch of the foot, and then that rolls us into that inner part of the ankle. So instead of doing that contracted state through that meridian, try to keep the lift of the arch of the foot going, so we're rolling onto the outer edge of the feet and helping to push the knees continuously wider, going for that direction of opening, elongating, expanding. If there's space for your spine to lift up tall as well, that's an amazing variation. You have the option here to start working through the head, neck, and shoulders as well. Maybe rolling the head all the way around in half circles. Pausing if there's spots that are particularly tight. See if your foot has the strength within it to roll just a little bit more outward. From there, feel the rest of the spine expanding upward and maybe even the hips opening from this anchor, this leverage of the knees being pressed wide. Three more long, slow breaths right here. Take some time in a forward fold. We drop the hands down, straighten the legs up, and turn the toes forward. The feet are welcome to be a bit wide as they already were, or you can start to shorten the stance. It's your personal preference. So the back sides of those legs open, stretching, expanding. So the whole spine continuously trying to just release. We're not holding back, and we're not forcing anything forward. That's the quality of yin, letting ourselves simply set up our skeleton, set up the bones in the right place, and then begin to let all the rest of them, the muscles, the tendons, and the ligaments, begin to find extra length. Again, bring awareness to the arch of the feet. Feel it lifting. We're not wanting to roll so much to the arch of the foot that we have to lift the big toes. Rather, it's a nice balanced place with that slight lift to the arch. We can strengthen that arch over time so that the arch becomes even greater, meaning the foot is even stronger. The muscles have tightened themselves up into that strong arched shape. And 3 more slow breaths. We head into frog pose shape from here, so gently drop down to the knees. Your option to use the bolster or not. If you're using it, bring it right out in front of you. And then from here, start to spread the knees very wide. Similar to what we were doing before in that quad stretch, our foot is flexed so that we can set that part of the ankle down. The knees are at a 90-degree angle, the hips are at a 90-degree angle, nice squares all through the whole leg. Perhaps we drop down to elbows or continue to rest the chest down onto the bolster, finding this nice frog pose as that part of the ankle again gets a chance to find that connection with the earth. So feel yourself breathing, relaxing, and connecting with those qualities that we mentioned at the beginning. Which is my focus? Grounding, stabilizing, or nurturing? Even in this intense pose here, can I give myself permission to receive that quality into my very body? It's as if every wonderful conscious breath that we're taking is an opportunity to sip that grounding, nurturing, or stabilizing element into our very essence. those 3 good slow breaths. Then we find ourselves lifting or scooting forward until our hips are released out of that deep shape. Eventually we're coming into a seated position with the legs opening up nice and wide. Perhaps the bolster's out in front of us. Again, you can choose a nice tall height to start traveling forward onto. You could choose lower. No bolster, no prop is necessary, just if it's helpful, that's what we can take. If the forehead's able to touch down onto anything, whether that's your prop or even your stacked hands, if your head's able to release, start to rock back and forth on the forehead. This helps to activate some acupressure points, which help take us into the relaxation response in our body. Maybe by this point, there's already space for you to go a bit deeper forward. So play with it, if that feels good. Just a few more breaths here. Make sure that the feet are not collapsing inward. Rather, send that energy through that inner part of the leg to help lift the toes to point directly upright. Activating just slightly more energy through that acupuncture point we were mentioning. Spleen number 6 on that meridian. With our last 3 breaths. After the 3rd breath, we crawl our hands back upright, and we find ourselves coming onto our backs with the bolster immediately underneath our hips. So oftentimes I approach this pose by sitting onto it, making sure I'm sitting more toward the front, so that as I start to lay back, my whole sacrum is still supported onto the bolster. The body is brought up and over, very relaxed, essentially a nice supported bridge pose. This is a wonderful variation to stay in if your body's already telling you, wow, this feels good. Otherwise, I'll continue to give you a deeper variation to play with from here. We can start to extend the left leg long. Bring the right knee in. Slide the hand up the outer side of that right leg, maybe grabbing on ultimately to the ankle or to the outside edge of the foot for a nice half happy baby pose. Or in yin yoga, we call this Reclined Dragon. This left knee can be a little bit bent, or you can continuously shoot energy through that side, trying to get it straighter and more grounded. This is just being playful, because more focus on the right knee works on your hip, more focus on the left leg works on the psoas and some of those leg muscles. So be playful, what feels easeful, what feels helpful. We take a little bit more time on this side. Perhaps you can find the left hand grounding down into the earth once again. Staying with it for 3 more breaths for this right leg. Let that release be slow. Extending right leg long. Taking left knee in. Sliding up to find the grip that's possible on this left side. Three more breaths on this side. As we release, you could take the option to simply let both legs be on the ground, extending legs long. The variation I'm going for is to start bringing the knees into the chest and then reaching both legs upright. It's like legs up the wall, but with the low back supported so that the spine's already starting to go into that nice, comfortable, rounded shape. If you're taking this variation, notice how there's one point where the legs practically float. If you drop the legs too low, there's work to keep them lifted. And if you go too far back, there's work to keep the legs upright. So instead, try to find the spot where it's effortless. They just kind of stay where you want them to stay. That's the space we're finding. working on slowing that breath. From here, you're welcome to continue to stay in this variation. This is extremely helpful for the blood pressure in the legs lowering, for helping to release some of that swelling that we might get when we're on our feet a lot. I personally am going to continue to head toward Plow Pose, bringing the thighs closer and closer into my body. You don't have to actually lift off the bolster. This is a nice deep stretch, just kind of hiking the body like this. But if you'd like to continue heading there, you can lift the hips off the bolster. Maybe the toes continue all the way to the ground, finding that connection to earth once more, even through the tips of the toes. Gradually return the hips back down as you find the feet starting to plant back onto the earth. Allow yourself to scoot backwards, exiting from the bolster with your spine. And perhaps you leave the bolster here for our Shavasana today to keep the knees propped in a very comfortable way. Or perhaps you're taking the variation of returning back into the cobbler's pose, just having the feet elevated a little bit with your bolster. So choose the variation that feels best. As you're playing around, you may notice, oh, my low back likes this variation better, or my spine likes this, or even my hips like this one better. So keep on playing around until you find the best, most kind version possible. And once again, perhaps we choose to have palms face down onto the earth as we're heading into this stable, grounded, nurturing Shavasana. Slow breaths flowing in and out. Begin to deepen the inhales and the exhales. Movements are brought back just to the fingers and the toes, all the way through the feet and the hands, ankles and wrists, and continuing to make these movements larger and larger. We're starting to stretch out like we're waking up first thing in the morning. At some point we feel ready to roll over into a nice fetal position to one side. And before we head up to a seated place, connect once again to your intention, whether it was grounding, nurturing, or stabilizing. Take a huge breath of air in, breathing in that very intention. And as your exhale finishes, find your hands connecting to Mother Earth, helping to press you up into a seated position. And feel your legs grounding into the earth. Feel your spine stable, able to lift up tall. Feel nurtured. Sometimes our yoga practices are like medicine, like those very nutrients that we're missing. It's all we need to be whole. And so here, from that state of wholeness, that deeper nurturing, let's join our hands together in front of the heart and have this commitment to continue to invite that energy of the earth into our system today. And so with all of this to help lead us onward, we wrap up the time we got to share together in this class with a sound of Om. Taking a huge inhale together now. Om. May we continue to be filled with light and happiness and peace. Namaste.